Okay, hello and assalamu alaikum everyone. I am Kashif Kamran from Kashif Kamran's Digital Learning. Today I'm having a very important session with a place winner from Advanced Audit and Assurance. I have joined by Sagar from Kenya, who got the place winner, the first position in the Advanced Audit and Assurance exams for March 2023. And the session is about your questions, your concerns you want to raise to the panel right in front of your screen. So if you have any questions pertaining to your last minute tips, techniques, or any guidance you want from Sagar, you are more than welcome to raise your questions. And I will be passing them on to Sagar for the replies. So in between, I get the very first question from the students. I would just like Sagar to shed some light on how you prepared for your AAA exams and how that resulted into you getting the first position. If you want to give
Uh, s-
some tips.
good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sagar Patel from Kenya. So basically, my experience with AAA was quite a good one. I still remember texting Sir Kashif in January that I've not done AA, so will I be able to manage to do the AAA exam? He told me, don't worry, just manage to complete all the things on the portal, and towards the exam, I'll be conducting webinars and all that. So I think it will be quite good. So my experience with AAA was quite good, especially how Sir has, divided the syllabus into blocks. I think that made it much easier for me as a newcomer to AAA to cover the content in a specific order given in the study plan. So I think I managed quite well, and I managed to do quite well in my first attempt. Yeah.
Okay, and how much past papers did you practice, and what exactly you did last day before exam? Suppose tomorrow was the exam, what you did in the last day before exam, because that's what the student would be more interested to know in.
So I still remember that day in the morning, you had conducted a session in the
Hmm.
morning for all AAA students who is sitting the exam the next day. So what
Hmm.
you just told that whatever you've done till now is more than enough. Now just keen on the technical articles maybe to brush up on like I still remember you told us to do SQM 1 and 2, and then it showed up in the exam because you said it's very important, and two questions came
Exactly.
from that. So I'm quite
Hmm.
happy that I managed to do it, and it came in question
Hmm.
2 and 3. So it was very important. That session really gave me that motivation to the last push, maybe just
Hmm.
cover the things that you're not very confident on, and maybe just go through the block notes that you give, the short notes that you give after every block. I think that's what I did on the last day.
Okay, before I go any further, Sagar, there is a question from Ayad Jafar. Let me put that question on the screen in front of you. Ayad is asking, how many papers did you practice, and what was your approach towards the requirements in the section A and B?
Papers doing I okay, maybe my approach is different to other people. So what I used to do after every topic that I used to cover in your blocks, there was some recommended past papers to do. I still remember you used to give
Hmm.
us questions from specific past papers to do. So what I used to do, in case I don't have the time to do the whole question, at least I brainstorm and write my thoughts down for that
Hmm.
particular question. And doing past papers towards the end, I think you told us to do the mock on the CBE platform, the pre-March mock. So that's I did it in exam conditions, and I also did another mock before the day of the exam, just to time myself, and have that confidence that I can finish the whole paper in 3 hours 15 minutes. Because I still remember in your lectures you had said it's very hard to get a pass if you don't complete the whole paper. So
Exactly.
try to finish all the three questions, and I think you have a greater chance of passing. Yeah, and my approach toward the requirement, I think the best thing about your blocks is when you do the question practice, especially for questions on risk of material misstatement and audit risk. So the easy marks like calculating materiality and the materiality statement. That's what the first thing in the exam. That's what I did, because you said those are three easy marks. So I was like,
Exactly.
let me manage to get those marks before I even read the other requirements.
Agree.
Yeah.
Agree. Thank you so much, Saga. Just want to add further to that question from Ayad Jafar. How many papers did you practice? I think the recent papers on the practice platform, I think there are a total of 5 or 6 recent papers from December 2020 exams onwards, which should be the key focus for any student. And secondly, towards the requirements, it's very important to read the requirement, not in a hurry. There are a lot of comma and which breaks the requirement. So when you're reading the requirement for the AAA paper, the examiner at time breaks the requirement with a comma or the word and at times students just overlook that, so they're partially answering half the requirement, not full the requirement. So that's very important. Okay, lots of more questions are coming in for you, Sagar. There is a question from Mobraze asking, what wasn't depth uh, knowledge? What is depth knowledge of IFRS required, or just basics? Like IFRS 9 has two detailed standards. What sort of accounting knowledge? What depth of accounting knowledge is required for the AAA paper?
Okay, so again, referring to your blogs, I still remember you had given us a list of important standards. I think there were around 10 accounting standards, and you also every week, I still remember, you used to send us videos on our WhatsApp group that please go and watch this YouTube video in this standard. I think AAA is not about knowing the standard in very detail, but I think you need to know like at least the basics, meaning like the subsequent requirement, how you have to recognize it in the accounting standards. I think that is very important. And coming to IFRS 9, I know it's a very lengthy standard, but I think in AAA it's only the recognition, I think, that is tested usually, because we are auditing. You see, we are not really going into the depths of what they're actually doing in the financial statements. Yeah.
Agree. And Mubrez,
Yeah.
the accounting treatment you're writing in the AAA paper, whether you're writing it in the risk question or the evidence question or the reporting question, each time the accounting treatment is worth 1 mark. So for 1 mark, imagine how long can you write? It could be just 2 to 3 sentences maximum, and it all depends upon which accounting standard are we addressing. So at times, on a certain accounting standard like related party disclosures, you can simply put one line that the standard requires a disclosure of a related party. That is it. But for other standards like asset held for sale, you might need to put some conditions, or for the development cost capitalized, you might need to put some conditions of the capitalization. So might just drag it to 2 to 3 sentences. So that's not the depth. You just should know the recognition criteria, the valuation criteria, the classification criteria, or the disclosure requirements of the standards, and that is it. What is needed? It's not the depth of the SPR which is needed in the AAA paper. Okay, there is another question from Frank. Did you finish writing the whole question, or you missed some requirements? That's a very important question, because for the AAA students, this is the most important question. Did you manage to complete 100% paper?
Yes, I did actually, because I think I practiced two past papers, as I said, the pre-mock
Mhm.
paper and the another exam in exam conditions. So strictly what you told us, the allocated time for question one, once it's done, move on. Because I think, we spend a lot of time in the lengthy questions, especially the question on ROM or audit risk, because it has a lot of marks. But I think you can only write according to the marks. You don't need to write pages for question one. And that is very important, because the other two questions might be easier. You see, in question two or three, they might have ethical requirements which are much easier to score in. So I think what I did, when 1 hour 30 minutes passed in the exam, I decided, let me just move on to the next question. Whatever will happen, if I have time at the end of the day, I'll come to the question one again. And which question I started answering is question one. I think question one, I saw it was risk of material misstatement, and then there was a question on the source documents, or I don't remember what exactly it was, like evidence. Right? It was an evidence question. So I think I started with that, because I got very happy, because I saw Rome and evidence. I'm like, yeah, this is a very good opportunity to score. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So, Frank, it's about completing the paper, but again, it's about ensuring that you complete each question within a stipulated time. Whatever you can do best within that time for a question number one, do it and move on. You should not focus on completing it, because if the time has got ended for a question one, there are opportunities awaiting you in the question two and three. So, you should not just compromise those opportunities by just dragging the time on the question number one. And I totally agree with Sagar. A lot of time, the students just continue to write the answer for audit risk and ROM as if this is the only question you have in the AAA paper. Okay, there is another question. It's up to you, Sagar. You want to answer it? It's a question from Umar Akram asking, how many marks did you get, Sagar?
Okay, I got 63%. Yeah,
Okay, so
in the
see, at the
exam.
end of the day, he got the first position from Kenya.
Yeah,
He's a
yeah,
place winner from Kenya. I think that matters. The marks doesn't matter, right? So there are a
yeah,
lot of countries where the place winner positions gets even into late 50s as well. It depends
yeah.
upon how much competition you have in the market. But again, 63 marks, anything surpassing 60 in AAA is excellent marks, right? Because there are students who struggle even taking 50 marks in the AAA paper.
Yeah.
Okay, so next question from Krishan. How to plan answer for section B, reporting and quality management part? The
Okay, so reporting, what I remember, I don't really remember vaguely. There was that you had given us a format. I think it was materiality, then treatment, then the reporting, and then impact on the financial statements. I think reporting questions have to be answered that way, and it's the easiest way to get marks. Because I still remember the way you taught us how to write reporting answers. I just remember it in MTRI. Every time
Mhm.
in the exam, I just wrote those initials, then I was planning my answers that way. Coming to quality management, again, quality management, it's that whole assurance standard. Again, it's a very lengthy one, but I still remember your videos. They stipulated how we have to answer quality questions again. How it is going to impact quality is what you have to answer, not going round the bush in according to those different 8 areas, but you need to understand how that will affect the quality. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Sagar. Very well explained. I just need to add something on to that. For reporting, yes, Sagar just spelled out correctly that you need to follow that approach of materiality, then the accounting treatment. Then you need to identify what is the under and overstatement if the accounting treatment has been done wrongly. And then because it's a reporting question, so for that material misstatement, what is the likely impact on the audit report or on the audit opinion? For the quality management, as rightly emphasized by Sagar, for quality management, it's not just remembering those 8 components of system of quality management. It's more about looking for the quality management issues in the case study, and it's not necessarily that all 8 will come in a case study. Examining team emphasize that it's more likely the engagement performance or the engagement resources which repeats a lot in the case study, and that's where the examining team has highlighted the same in the examiner article ISQM1 and part 2. So it's about identifying the problem and then relating it with the standard, that what the standard tells us about this current situation, and the variance, basically the variance between the actual given in the scenario and the standard practice, is basically the quality management issue you're trying to identify. Okay, moving on to the next question from I think that's the name of some institution probably, but let's put the question. It says, what should be the order for answering the paper, 1 2 3 or in any other order?
So personally, what I believe is that I just go according to how the exam is set, question one,
Mhm.
two, and three. Because, for example, if I go to question two before answering question one and I find it very hard, I think I'll waste more time in question two, leaving a large chunk of marks in question one. And I think question one, it's very easy. Out of 50 marks, I think to get even, let's say 25 to 30 marks, it's very easy in question one, especially, with the materiality, the conclusion, then, prioritizing the risks. So I think it's very easy to score in question one compared to two and three, because once you've done question one well, even you'll get the motivation to do well in the other two questions. Yeah. So I did my paper in the same order that it was in the exam.
Thank you so much. Yes, the right technique is to do it in order of 1 2 3, because when you enter the exam environment, you are fresh, your mind is fresh, and I believe that energy which you have at the highest level should be spent on the first question first, rather than you come back to the question one when you're exhausted after doing the section B. So I think your the highest energy level should be put down to the question number one, as rightly pointed out by Saga. Okay, another question from Srishti, how do you cope with exam condition as in all the noise with clacking of keyboards from 50 students in a room?
Okay, so I think this is a very subjective question, because everyone has a way of dealing, because that is something that's not in your control.
Mhm.
Everyone is going to bang those keyboards because there is
Exactly.
exam pressure and they have to type quickly. And myself, I did it because you have to finish the exam. So it's not something in your control. So what I would suggest is don't really look around what is going on around you. Just
Mhm.
focus on the question that's ahead of you, because those things are not in your control. So you can't even really do anything about it. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Again, that's not in your control, but you just need to focus on your exam paper as the other students are doing so. And definitely, the keyboards do make noise. And when there are like 50 students using the keyboards in one room, so definitely the noise level has to come in. Yes, ACCA should do something about replacing keyboards, bringing the newer ones or better one, which at least reduce the noise levels in the exam environment. Okay, another question again from Ayad. Any tips for constructing audit procedures, anything other than CASP, what Sir Kashif has suggested? Even after adopting CASP, I don't think my procedures are relevant.
Okay, so CASP is the easiest way. I remembered it in the exam. But now again, how you apply CASP in the exam, if you just say CASP something, you don't know how it's affecting the question at hand. How will that procedure help in the audit? I think that is the most important question. I think even Sir Kashif, when he's doing questions in the blocks, he just
Hmm.
doesn't apply CASP. He applies CASP and then gives a suggestion on how it will help in the audit of the company. Yeah. So how will that procedure help in the audit process? Yeah. I think that's the most important part
Okay, so it's
because
more about.
yeah,
Continue, continue,
because
continue.
I know that many people cram CASP and go write general points in the
Hmm.
exam, but now that is not helping the situation at hand or the case study. You see,
Exactly,
and that is why I
exactly.
think many people don't. And I think procedures and evidence is one area everyone should be scoring the highest marks because it's one of the easiest areas in AAA because you can remember something like cast to the financial statements for capital forecast, and I think that one applies to generally all. But I think the mistake students make is they rote learn, uh, they cram previous marking schemes and go to the exam and write the same, but it's not applicable to the scenario. Yeah.
Totally agree. Totally agree with you, Sagar. It's the adaption, right? And it's not just to remember CASP. It's more important to know the application of it. How you blend, how you look into the case study, and how you identify the relevant facts from the case study, and then around those facts, you try making good procedures by using a relevant action, a relevant source, and a relevant purpose. So it's more about the application. And I hope if you do that, would be great enough for you in your upcoming exams, Ayad. Okay, there is a very long question from Mubin. I'll just take it after some more questions. A question from a student asking, any tips to write the procedure or evidence for cash flow forecast?
I just said it right now. You see, the first one I wrote in my exam because cash flow forecast came in my exam was recast to check its financial accuracy. I think that one I learned it from the first day. I was like, if this
Mhm.
comes, this is my first thing. I'll put it in the exam. So that's what I
Agree.
did. Then again, you need to understand the cash flow forecast first of all to write a procedure on it. You see,
Mhm.
how you see there are different aspects of the forecast. You see, like the assumption they've used, management assumption. You see, you question that, and then once you've questioned that, you can write a procedure on that, like discuss with management. You see, and I think I still remember this very clearly. You told us you can discuss many things with management, and those different things can give you different procedures. Yeah.
Exactly. See, in the cash flow forecast, as rightly pointed out by Saga, there are a lot of assumptions used in, and management and the examiner must have given you the notes for each assumption. You need to critically evaluate each assumption. You need to see what can you discuss more about this assumption with management, or is there any relevant source document for the underlying basis which you can review as a document. So a lot of discussions, a lot of review can take place, review of the source document underlying the assumptions of the management, and then on the overall accuracy of the assumptions, you can obtain a representation letter, but should be the last procedure, not the first procedure for the cash flow forecast. Okay, another question from the same student. What did you do one day before the exam? Tips on revision. What should we do for the next few hours from now?
Okay, so first of all, what you've been doing for the past 2 months, or let's say 3 months, preparation wise, I think everything is in your head. I think what happens to students most of the time, including myself, is that exam anxiety, that what will be tested, what is going to come, what if it's this, what if it's that. There are very ifs and buts. But I think again, that is not something in our control. The exam has already been set. What we have to do now is brush up on the things that you're not very sure about. As I mentioned before, the last attempt you had conducted a very important session. I think it was more than 1.5 hour, where you explained to us each and every section in very detail. Be very calm now because you've already done what you could in the past 2 months. And one day before, you're not going to remember the whole syllabus. So don't try to do that. Whatever you know is enough. Just go with that positive mindset that whatever is in that case, I'll be able to relate what I've learned. So I think that's what I did. And tips on revision, I think again, I made my short notes from what Sir Kashif used to explain in the blocks. So that's what I used to go through before the exam. And for example, if you have a morning exam, I think it's very important that you get good sleep because this exam can be very mentally challenging. You see, it's especially it's a 3 hours 15 minutes paper, and you're on the screen, so it can be very mentally challenging during the exam. So I think good sleep and good breakfast before the exam is very important because it will give you that extra motivation to write more in the exam. Yeah.
Yes, totally agree. Because in the last moment tips for revision, every student will have a different answer to it because you know where you are standing today on Sunday and what are the gaps you need to fill in for Monday tomorrow. And very rightly pointed out by Sagar is to take a good sleep, a good rest before your exam because that also matter. A lot of times the students are so exhausted when they enter the exam environment, studying up to the last moment, your mind don't perform very well if your mind is exhausted, and you will spoil your exam setting by studying too much. I normally suggest my students that Sunday should be a relaxed day. You should calm yourself down. You should not study anything. You have done enough of the studies. I think you should sit down, relax yourself for the exams tomorrow. Okay, lots of questions are coming in, Saga, for you. So you will be kept busy by the students. There is another question coming from Frank. Did you met a question whereby you did not understand what was required, and what was your approach in tackling that situation?
Okay, yeah, so I did find this, the question 3 of the exam, the one I did. I was already very tired after doing question 1 and 2, and I was left with like 45 minutes to do the last question. It was a question on group audit and quality management. So, first of all, I didn't understand what the question was asking me to do because there were so many objects, like quality management, group audit, I don't know this. But again, as Sir said, that and in the middle is so important to answering that particular question. So what I did, I remembered that and I broke down the question into different parts. It was a 16 marks requirement. Then I saw, oh, it's not a whole 16 marks, but it's 16 marks broken down into 844. You see? So, and that becomes very easy to answer then as well. And then what my approach was, again, I said I broke down the question because of that and then I was able to manage to, I think, score most of it after that. Yeah.
Okay, so even yes, even if you get a challenging question, sometimes you do get a question which you fail to understand at the first go. But again, carefully rereading the requirement, you will get some track, some ray of hope what to do in that question. Because eventually we know the requirements in the AAA paper are not very different from the previous past papers. It could be the exam pressure, or as Sagar said, because it was a question number 3, and by that point in time he was much exhausted, so probably at times it gets a bit more difficult to understand the requirement. So I hope you got an answer, Frank from Saga. Okay, there is another question from I think that's more like a nickname, Red Boy. Did you used to finish the whole question during each time you practiced doing
Yeah.
questions? Yeah.
Yes, yes. I think this habit I developed because of the assignments. You used to give us assignments after every particular topic. So even if I don't do all of them, I try to do one question at least, and I try to type my answer. At least, I think that typing habit has to come because with ACC exams, I think typing is the most critical success factor to you passing the exam. You see, if you're very slow in typing, you won't be able to finish the whole requirement. So I think the more you type, the more you get used to that particular keyboard, the one you're using at home, and the more you'll be able to type in the actual exam as well. Or even 80% of your typing speed will be used in the exam. Yeah.
Totally agree. Totally agree. It's about the computer based. It's about practicing on the platform, on the practice platform more. A lot of time I've seen students, they know the paper is on a computer based environment, and they still solve assignments and send me for review by pen and paper, which is technically wrong. You're not doing the right approach. You need to use the keyboard, your laptop as much as possible to ensure that your typing speed build up, as Sagar pointed out. Because if you're not good at a typing speed, you will be unable to complete the 100% paper. Try to reach at least 90% of the total paper in the exam time to pass the AAA paper. Okay, another question from Shahriar. If examiner asked evaluate the business risk and audit risk, then conclusion is written after this or written at the end of the question. If you want to give an answer, Sagar, or
Yes, yes.
I'll
I
be
think you,
sure.
in your webinar in March, I think you mentioned this very clearly. I think the
Hmm.
conclusion has to be after that particular question because
Yes.
It's evaluating that risk. You see, before I still remember before the approach in last year was conclusion at the end of of question one, but this one
Agree.
it's after the question of ROM or material of or audit risk. Yeah.
Exactly. So if in the first part it is the audit risk, for example, and in the second part it's the audit risk or ROM, then you will give conclusion after writing A and B. So after B, you will give a conclusion, which will primarily be the conclusion for ROM and then the business risk. More broadly for ROM and very less for the business risk. Not giving the conclusion at the end of the briefing note anymore. Okay, there is another question from Ayad. Group related audit risk are being frequently tested but not published by the examiner. If you practice last 5 to 6 past paper, there is not a single paper with group related risk. Any tips on this?
To be very honest, our spraying group does not come in our exam, but it showed up in question three. There is nothing you can really do about that. But I think even you mentioned it's group questions have been frequently being tested, so be ready for it. Even if the examiner is not publishing, it might be for a reason. They want to test it again in the next session. So just be good in group related standards. I think there are like 3 or 4 standards that even sir has mentioned, like goodwill calculation, IFRS 3, IFRS 10, how to account for a subsidiary, how to account for a associate. I think those things will really help you in the exam. And I think my IFRS knowledge on that made me clear question three. Even if I didn't know the much of the auditing bit, the accounting bit helped me clear at least part of the question. Yeah.
Yes, and yeah, just to add on what Sagar said, is basically if you're not getting the group audit questions in the last 5 to 6 past papers, you can just broaden the horizon. Take papers from September 18 and go onwards. You will find the group audit questions because we know the ACCA now make a hybrid version. March paper, June paper, they wait for the June paper to end over, and then they publish a combined paper known as March June paper. So for that reason, a lot of question gets omitted from ACCA structure, but you can broaden the horizon to get a group audit question from September 18 onwards. And just as Sagar pointed out, an accounting treatment for associates, joint venture, goodwill, intercompany transactions, how they're eliminated. Some sort of these treatments are very repetitive in group audit. Rest of the accounting treatments are the same you get in a non-group audit situations as well. Okay, another question from Srishti. Tips for time management which help you ace the exam. I think this is something you've been answering for the last couple of minutes now. Want to add some more
Okay,
light
again,
to
I'm
it?
going to repeat it. Question one, try and finish it in 1.5 hours, not more than that. If you're spending more than 1.5 hours in question one, you will not be able to finish the exam. Once 1.5 hours is done in the exam, move on. Because as Sir said, there are more opportunities to score in question two and three. So 1.5 hours, whatever you've written is quite enough. And because in 1.5 hours, I know you're not going to be just sitting around and wondering, you're going to be typing something in that question. So 1.5 hours is more than enough. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine, right? Because again, this has been said by me and Sagar that there is a stipulated time for each question, and you need to excel within that time, and you need to move on to the other questions because there are opportunities awaiting you which you need to grab in. Okay. Another question from Neha: is it okay to write poor quality management after every quality issue explained?
No, not really. I don't think so. Because again, what Sir said, how it's going to affect quality. You don't need to mention quality, quality, quality again and again, again. You can just mention it once or twice, I think. Then I think, Sir, you can explain this much better than me. Yeah.
Yes, because see, if you are writing poor quality management, those three words, and suppose there are 10 issues. So in 10 issues, those 3 words makes it 30 words. How much exam time are you wasting on it? So you
Yeah,
can give
exactly.
you can give a conclusion, and in the conclusion you can say that because of the above quality management issues identified above, the quality of the audit or the way the audit has been planned and performed has been compromised. So you can write that one in conclusion as a whole, or you can say at the start of the answer, the following matters identified below have compromised the quality of the audit. And then you start writing the matter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So don't repeat the same sentence again and again. It's just wasting your time more than anything else. There is no negative marking, right? So even if you write poor quality management 10 times, that's not nothing happening with it. But again, you're just wasting your crucial time in the exam paper. Okay, the next question from a student again. For the briefing note, the conclusion should be written after audit risk or at the end of the briefing note. I think that was already made clear from Sagar and by myself. It's right after the requirement of audit risk and business risk, not at the end of the briefing note anymore. Okay, and another question from the same student. Any tips for writing the conclusion for audit risk and business risk?
The conclusion, yes. The what so I still remember what you told us. Make sure prioritizing risk. How you've prioritized those risks is going to give you marks for conclusion. So make
Yes.
sure you know the quantitative materiality and also the qualitative one. So you should know those two. Very important for this exam. Yeah.
Yes, examiner is just looking for your basis of prioritizing the significant risk. Particularly, we know that business risk is not prioritized. Only the audit risk are prioritized. The business risk are only significant from the case study. But audit risk, you are not just picking up the significant one, but you're also prioritizing them. Not all of them, but at least the first two and three of them are prioritized on a quantitative basis. Whichever is most material comes first, then the next, then the next. If you have a detection risk in an audit risk question, it should be placed at number one position, because detection risk is something which affects the auditor. And then you can put all the accounting treatment risk under the detection risk in the order of materiality. And that is the conclusion you have to give, that the significant risk has been prioritized on the basis of the quantitative materiality in the order of their significance. Full stop. So that's what the examining team is looking for. Just one line even is sufficient if that defines the basis of your conclusion on how you identified the significant risk in exam paper. Okay, there's another question from Christian. Please explain CASP approach. Though it's not a technical session, but if you can just bring the full form of CASP, Saga, if you still
So
remember it.
okay, I don't really remember it. If you can just do it. I did the exam like 3 months ago.
Sure.
Yeah.
C
Yeah.
stands for the case, right? C is case specific. It should be extracted from the case. A is action, review, recalculate, discuss. It should start with an action. Source is the subject matter. For example, you are discussing, then with whom? Discuss with the finance director. So finance director becomes the source. Review, what are you reviewing? Reviewing cash book, reviewing board minutes. So that becomes the subject matter. So for with every action, there has to be a subject matter. Recalculate what? Defer taxation or recalculate amortization expense. So that basically becomes the subject matter. And the purpose, P is the purpose. Why? What is the reason? Why are you recalculating the deferred tax, or why are you discussing with the finance director? For what? So the objective comes at the end of the procedure. I hope that make you clarified, Christian. Another question from Umar. In question one, there is no need to give conclusion heading and conclusion at the end of the question. Again, I think that's the same question coming back and back again. In the question one, briefing note, no conclusion at the end. It's the conclusion right after the risk part. That is, I think, that should be much clear. Uh, okay, there is a question from Muhammad Siddiqui. 1.5 hour includes reading and planning time for question one as well, Saga?
Yeah, okay, me, that's what my approach was. In 1.5 hours, I tried to read the whole requirement and also plan and then start writing my answer. But that differs from people to people because my typing speed is quite okay. So that's why I managed to finish it in 1.5 hours.
Exactly. So my approach is very similar to Sagar. I said 97 minutes. So Sagar is saying 1.5 is 90 minutes. So that's not much of a
Yeah,
difference.
yeah,
Yeah,
almost 7 minutes different. Yeah.
exactly. It's 97 minutes. And in that 97 minutes, 24 is technically the reading and planning time for section A. And 75 minutes, you have to write up the answer. So that's the best approach you can take for the question number one. Okay, another question from Shahriar. Materiality is based on profit before tax given in a question or after the adjusted profit before tax.
Okay, so in my paper, adjusted profit before tax came. So, the
Mhm.
adjusted, it might have some wrong treatment again. So I
Mhm.
think just base it on profit before tax because that adjusted one also has wrong treatment in it. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a very wise approach to use it profit before tax, and you should not be bothered about adjusting the profit with the misstatements you've identified. A lot of times, student gets confused with that. That should we adjust the profit on our own? No, just use the profit number given by the examiner, profit before tax number, and take the percentage out on it. So that okay, have more questions as well. Did you get any current issue questions like climate risk in your attempt, Sharia
No, 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 no.
Sagar?
No, there was no
No.
climate risk in my paper. It was in my SBR exam, but not in AAA. Yeah.
Not in AAA. And Shreya's climate risk is again in the June 23 mock for AAA, as it was in the September 22 mock for AAA. And the good thing ACC has done is they've just copy pasted the September 22 mock into the June 23 mock. So it's identically the same paper, but the climate risk is in both exams and gives us a chance of coming in the real June 23 exam. And I've already covered a video on climate risk in my on my YouTube channel. You can watch out for it. Okay, there's another question. Is there any new current issue we should be taking account of during this exam at the rate, Mr. Kashif? No, there is only the climate risk as the current issue. No further current issues for the June exams. So far, so forth. Okay, Irshad is asking a question. Is it better to revise notes or do mock today? What is better?
See, me, I think you should do a mock. You know why? It's going to help you to practice for tomorrow. That's the it's a silver lining, you know. If you're going to practice today, it's going to help you tomorrow. Yeah. Because if you read notes and something does not show up from those notes tomorrow, what will you do? You see?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Totally agree with Sagar. Do the mock today for sure. No revisions, right? Okay, that marks the end of a question. I missed one question. I don't know what was the reason of that question. That's a pretty long question from Mobeen, probably like a story. Just let's reading throughout. There are some incidents due to which external auditors should be alarmed or attentive. For example, as the external auditor, I have got some information about client from internet search. Rather, it should be told by the management itself or partner in agreeing to CFO assertions easily, which should be challenged. I want you to tell more type of instances for which I should be alarmed as it impacts the overall audit. What I'm Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Saga.
Okay, yeah, I still remember there is a practice question I did about the same scenario, like where there was something on the internet, but the management didn't tell us about. So I think this is more related to, you know, where outside like the community or something is talking about the firm. So I think everything they external media or whatever, you should, as an auditor, you should not get to know from a newspaper, for example, that this company was involved in this particular scandal and this they did not, you know, follow the relevant ethical requirements and all that. I think the you should management should tell you about any issues that are pertaining to the company uh, before the start of the overall audit. For example, during the interim audit as well. Yeah, I
Totally
still
agree.
remember
So, yeah.
this was a
Hmm.
very interesting question in a past paper. I still remember this question. Yeah.
Yes, I do remember, but I cannot just recall which past paper it was. But just emphasizing more on what Sagar said is that if you get to know some information about the client from any other source other than the client, you should increase your professional skepticism in the conduct of the audit. You should be alert as to why the management is concealing information from you, and there might be more possible instances that the management might conceal information from you. So your trust factor on management or the integrity of the client factor goes down, because you will not be trusting management anymore because you thought they were concealing information from you, which they should have given you at the first go, but you got to know about it from any other source. So I think it's something which will make you skeptical. You should have an inquiring mind. You should approach audit with a higher risk factor, and you should challenge every statement of the management then in the audit.
Yes.
So I hope I've answered your question, Mubin, and Sagar answered your question equally well. Though at the first go, I thought you were writing a story then a question, but I hope you got a clear answer for that. Okay, another question coming from Karina. That's again a very long one this time as well. Should the conclusion be based after answering requirements on risk part or after answering the whole question? Because in the introduction of the briefing note, we also mentioned that the note addressed the part C and the part D.
Oh, okay, yeah. So as I mentioned before, conclusion is always after the risk question, because you're evaluating the risks. So when there's
Exactly.
the verb is evaluate, you need to provide a conclusion after that. And part C and D is a separate requirement on its own. So I think the approach has changed. I think after September last year. So now the conclusion comes after the risk part. Yeah.
Yes, just want to emphasize on one thing here from your question, Karina, and taking the example by Sagar. You need to give a conclusion after the risk part, because in the risk part, the examiner is saying evaluate the business risk or evaluate the audit risk. So every time in the AAA paper, wherever the examiner says evaluate, by default we have to give a conclusion, right? Now, suppose you do the A part, business risk, B part, audit risk, and you give a conclusion. In the C part, there was something examiner wants you to discuss, identify, or explain. And in the D part, the examiner then asks you evaluate the ethical implications or evaluate the ethical and professional issues. Then, because the D part is asking you to evaluate, then you have to give the conclusion again for the D part, because the question is asking you to evaluate something. So there will technically be two conclusions then, one after the risk and one after the ethical part. Because every time the examiner says evaluate, you have to give a conclusion. I hope that will make you more clear, Karina. Okay, now I think that finish off the list of questions for the time being. And in the next last 5 minutes of this session, I just want to ensure that we've covered every possible thing, and we've heard the perspective of Saga. Uh, okay. How important is this, Sagar, staying calm and taking the right decisions in exam? Because I think emotional stability is also very important, not just having the technical knowledge.
Yes, I think this is very important because my experience with ACCA over the last 1 year or so, especially with these professional exams, especially I prefer to do it in the afternoon compared to the morning paper. So
Mhm.
by the time I'm going to sit the exam, I'm already seeing on the groups I am in what the morning paper was about. So again, now that stress factor comes back in. Oh no, you see, this has been tested, so will it be tested again? So I think it's very important to remain calm in the situation. Just focus on what you've done. Don't focus on what people are telling you to do. Focus
Mhm.
on what you've been doing for the past 2 months. I mean, you've been giving it your sweat and hard work for the past 2 weeks. So I think what you do in the last moment is the most important thing, because all that hard work was not for anything else but to just get that 50%. So I think taking these right decisions toward the exam, as I said before, just focus on the things that you're weak at today. It's going to help you tomorrow. Yeah.
Totally agree with you, Sagar. Not adding anything to that because that was perfectly explained. So at times you've seen students that, for example, they in the real exam they don't know something worth 10 marks, for example, and there is a requirement for 10 marks which they have never seen in the past paper. Uh, the student tries to take a lot of stress for that 10 marks requirement, and that 10 marks dominates their 90 marks, which is an opportunity. They could still have passed the paper with 90 marks, but that 10% paper is dominating the 90% paper.
Yeah, you see, again, as I said, a group audit question came in my exam. The last question, the 16-mark requirement. And I had no idea about how to audit a group because, but then again, what I decided to do is that what do I know about group audit? You see, what do I know? What existing knowledge do I have? And how can I apply it to the scenario in the particular given time? So I think what is very important is that the whole exam, 25 marks is not going to be hard. Out of those 16, they could be easy 8 marks to get at least half the requirement. And I think the next question, it was an easier requirement, the impact on report and the opinion. So I was like, okay, I understand the materiality, I understand the effect on the report. Why don't I finish the 6 marks first? So what I did, I finished the impact first, 6 marks, and out of that, I think you also said to us, whenever there is commercial acumen, you explain the wider implication of the opinion. So I put that as well. So I think I got 6 plus 1 7, 7 out of 25, and I needed out of the other 16, I needed only like 6 to 7 to pass the requirement to get 14 out of 25. So I think that's how personally I approach questions. When I don't know something, I let it be for the time being, go to the next question. At least that I'll be able to score marks rather than focusing on those and also missing out on the other 6 marks you get. Yeah.
Totally agree with you, right? So it's more about again looking at the broader picture, looking at the bigger picture. If you don't know the 10 marks, 6 marks, 4 marks, just don't let that dominate your remaining paper, because there are so much opportunities in those 90, 94 mark paper you have, and you can still pass it. So you need to have that emotional stability in the exam, which really counts. Because I believe this next thing on your screen now, which Sagar can also see, the 195 minutes are the decider between success and failure, and whatever you do best in it. So challenge is there. We cannot rule out that AAA is not a challenging paper. It is a challenging paper, but with your right approach, right techniques, and your right study track you must have taken in the last 2 3 months, you should pass the paper. Sagar is an example sitting in front of you. He just not passed the paper. He got the first position from Kenya, and he's a place winner for March 2023 exam. So I hope Sagar presence today is giving you a lot of motivation as well.
Yes, also I got SBR position holder in September session as well. I got 84% in SBR.
Okay, so see, he got back to back possessions for SPR, then for AAA. So I hope that adds motivation to you at in these last 24 hours ahead of the exams. So see, it is possible. That means, right? It is possible. So if
And
it is
and I've not
possible,
and I've not
sure.
even given FR or double A. So I think if I can do it, anyone can do
Mhm.
it. You see,
Anyone can do it. Exactly,
do it. Yeah.
exactly. That's true. So few of the last things, optimism should prevail over pessimism. You should be optimistic, look at opportunities, not the threats, not the areas you don't know in the paper. How important is optimism, Saga, in the paper?
See, first of all, I think you should be optimistic, not pessimistic, because if you go with that pessimistic mindset, you already failed the paper before you've started. So
Agree.
I think optimism means just, you know, I think what is very important about exams, yes, tomorrow is the day between success and failure. But what you've been doing for the past 2 months is going to help you get that success. So I think what you've done should be that guiding point and that motivation and that guide, that source of optimism that tomorrow, yes, I will go and do my best. And then whatever will happen, we'll see about it later. So don't think about the result before you've even given the exam. Exactly.
Totally
Yeah.
agree. Totally agree. Totally agree. So it's the optimism prevailing in the exam paper for your success. We already got the answer from Sagar on section A first or B first. So it's the section A first, then B. If you don't know any requirement, what should be done? I think Sagar answered that question from a student. Uh, you, I'll ask one last question from Sagar. Just there are a couple of three more questions coming from the students, which I think we should prioritize and wrap up the session now. Uh, Okay, there's a question from a student. Materiality level is usually set on the audit planning stage. However, it changes depending upon the risk of the entity, if I'm not wrong. If more risks are found, does the materiality level reduces?
You see, I think what my plan is during an exam materiality is the CEO also tells you that it should be based on profit before tax. Now, in an exam, you should not reduce the quantitative materiality, but you can give a statement that the materiality should be reassessed considering the following risks that I've identified during the audit. Yeah, it should be reassessed, meaning you don't tell them that how much it should be, but you tell them that it should be changed because you've identified more than the risk that you expected. Yeah.
Exactly, totally agree. So the materiality you have calculated at the start of the briefing note that will remain the same, and on that basis you will identify the risk throughout the audit risk below. You will not change the materiality because of the number of risks you have identified, but yes, you can put that as a statement in a conclusion that we should reassess the materiality on the basis of the risk identified above, something like that, as Sagar pointed out, right? But don't change the materiality in the exam paper. That would be wrong. Practically your knowledge is right. This is what happens practically in the audits.
Yeah, in real audit situation, that you change the materiality during the course of the audit.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, totally agree. Okay, Madhya is asking a question. Hi Sagar, can you please let us know which topics were examined in March 23 for question 2 and 3?
Uh, in my paper, it was quality management, as I said, in both question two and three, with capital forecast in question two. Sorry, cash flow forecast, and then in question three, it was group audit.
With the quality management, right?
Yeah, quality management issues. Yeah, in the group audit. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And Madhya, quality management is still important for Section B this time for the June exams because that's a new area, an exploring area, and I think the examining team will keep exploring that. Okay, the Sir KK, please explain commercial acumen in terms of question 2 and 3. For question 1, you said linking with case is commercial acumen. Yes, in question number 1, the commercial acumen is more related to the business risk, right? You're writing the impact of the business risk, and you need to have a good commercial insight of the business, that how the risk will impact the business competitive advantage or market share or business profitability or business reputation. I think that sort of awareness is much needed. In other questions, it's more about commercial acumen in terms of deciding whether to accept a client or deciding whether to accept an engagement. That's very critical. You need to take a decision that whether the audit firm should take on a new client or take on a new engagement, considering your competence, your resources, and at one point you're getting the fees, right? At one point you're getting the fees, that is an opportunity for you. But on the other side, it could be that you don't have competence to offer the service. So at the end of the day, you need to refuse that engagement. So that's how commercial acumen can come into other questions as well. Anything you would like to add, Sagar, on commercial acumen? Because we're just moving towards the last 2 minutes of the session now.
Oh, you too. Only one thing. Maybe if a question on reporting comes, audit report and audit opinion, how will that opinion affect your future engagements? That's a commercial acumen as well. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So Bushra Iqbal is saying a bit nervous for the exams tomorrow, and again, she's just supporting you, is saying you are a genius. Definitely, he is a genius, and that's the reason he got the
I'm not.
position.
I'm not
And
a
sitting,
genius. I'm not a genius.
you,
I'm just all
you're,
like all of you. Yeah.
yeah, a source of motivation. He's a source of motivation for all of you. He's trying to tell you that if I can do it, you can also do it, right? So he's just a student. You are also a student, right? So I wish you all very best of luck for your exams tomorrow. Uh, don't be nervous. I know these are nervous times. The last 24 hours, you start to get all sort of bad thoughts. You get all sort of thoughts that I'm forgetting everything I learned through. So that's quite natural in the last 24 hours before your exam gets into the life mode. One final thing from Sagar. Your key three tips to pass the AAA paper. Just summarize. What could be the three best tips here?
First of all, in question one, I think manage to get the materiality marks and the communication marks the first thing in the exam before even you read the requirement. That too from subject date, all that, the report format and all that. Get it right. Secondly, try to finish all the questions. Make sure you manage your time really well. And thirdly, be calm and make sure that you have a good night's sleep before the exam. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So just reinforcing on what Sagar said, he said that grab the easy marks in question one, the materiality 3 marks, the communication skill 4 marks. Ensure you complete all the 100% paper within that stipulated time you have. And finally, he said, have be calm and take a good night's sleep before your real exams tomorrow. So these are three good tips from Sagar, the place winner, first position in the advanced audit and assurance exam from Kenya. And I hope his presence here must be a good source of motivation for all of you ahead of your exams tomorrow. Thank you so much, Saga, for being part of this live session on my social media pages and taking the time out for this session. It was a great honor interacting with you and you sharing thoughts with the future AAA students. So, really thankful for your presence in the session today. And wish you all the very best of luck. Whoever is watching the session, participated in the session, and all the entire AAA community, wish you the very best of luck for your exams tomorrow. Have a nice day ahead. Study effectively. Take care. Goodbye. And Allah Hafiz, all of you.
Thank you so much, sir, for inviting me.
You're welcome. You're welcome.